Let's be honest, there are highlight plays. And then there are plays that stop you mid-scroll, make you rewind 3 times, and force you to text someone just so you're not the only one losing your mind over what you just watched. What Caitlin Clark did on July 13, 2025, against the Dallas Wings was exactly that kind of play. And the fact that the ESPN announcer on ABC literally screamed "touchdown fever" tells you everything you need to know before you even see the clip. Because what Clark threw on that fast break wasn't just a basketball pass. It was a spiral. It was a bomb. It was the kind of throw you expect to see in an NFL stadium on a Sunday afternoon, not in a WNBA arena. And yet there it was, hanging perfectly in the air, dropping right into Sophie Cunningham's hands like she was a wide receiver hitting full stride down the sideline. But before we even get to that pass, we need to talk about the full picture of what happened that afternoon. Because the touchdown throw didn't come out of nowhere. It was the product of a player who was operating on a completely different level than everyone else on that floor. A player who came into that game still working her way back from injury, still shaking off rust, still finding her rhythm, and yet somehow, effortlessly, turned in a performance that had the entire basketball world talking for days afterward. The Indiana Fever came into the July 13th game against Dallas sitting at 11-10 on the season. A team that had been fighting through injuries and inconsistency for weeks. Caitlin Clark herself had been dealing with a groin injury that had cost her significant time. And fans had been watching carefully to see whether the version of Clark they knew, the explosive, court-controlling, defense-shredding, playmaking machine, was truly back. She answered that question in a big way. In just 25 minutes of action, Clark put up 14 points, 3 rebounds, 13 assists, and 5 steals. 13 assists in 25 minutes. Let that number sit with you for a second. That is not a stat line. That is a masterclass. That is one player making every single person around her better in real time. Reading the defense before the defense even knows what it's doing. Delivering passes that arrive in exactly the right spot at exactly the right moment. Over and over and over again. And the Fever as a team reflected that energy completely. Indiana scored 64 first-half points against Dallas, the most points any WNBA team scored in a single half during the entire 2025 season. 64 points in one half. They led by 18 at the break and never looked back, eventually winning the game 102-83 in what felt less like a competitive matchup and more like a demonstration. A showcase of what this team looks like when Caitlin Clark is playing her game, making her reads, and pulling her teammates into the kind of collective rhythm that is genuinely hard to stop. But let's talk about the sequence that gave us the touchdown pass. Because the play itself started on the defensive end, which somehow makes it even more impressive. Clark stepped into the passing lane on a Dallas possession and blocked the layup attempt from wings guard J.J. Quinterly. A block. She started the play with a block. All-star center Aliyah Boston snatched the loose ball and immediately pushed it ahead. Clark caught it in stride in the open floor. Already running. Already seeing the court in front of her. And that's when Sophie Cunningham appeared on the wing, legging it down the floor with her hand up, asking for the ball. Between Clark and Cunningham stood a Dallas defender with her arms stretched wide, trying to cut off the passing lane. Any other player hesitates. Any other player pulls back and resets. Caitlin Clark threaded that ball over the outstretched arms of the defender, into the open space ahead, landing perfectly in Cunningham's hands in full stride for the layup. No dribble, no hesitation, just pure court vision delivered at full speed. Ryan Ruocco, the ESPN play-by-play man on the ABC broadcast, absolutely lost it. Touchdown. Fever. He yelled. And honestly, the call was the only appropriate response to what just happened. Because that pass had all the DNA of a football throw. The trajectory, the timing, the distance, the precision. You don't see that kind of pass in basketball very often. And when you do, it tends to be from a very specific type of player. The kind of player who sees plays 2 or 3 steps before they develop. The kind of player who has total trust in her own arm and total trust in her teammates' ability to run the right route. And in that moment, Clark was the quarterback, Cunningham was the wide receiver, and the entire Indiana Fever offense was operating like a 2-minute drill with the game on the line. Except it wasn't the end of the game. It was the middle of the second quarter. That's just how locked in she was. And what made the play even better was what happened after the game. Sophie Cunningham posted clips of the win on social media, and Caitlin Clark responded to the post with 3 words and all the energy in the world. Touchdown NNNNNN. That's that football experience, baby. That response went viral immediately. Because it captured something real. Clark wasn't just being humble or deflecting credit. She was genuinely hyped about the execution. She loved the play. She was proud of the throw. And there's something deeply satisfying about watching an elite athlete celebrate their own work. With pure, unfiltered excitement. Not because they're showing off, but because they know how hard it is to pull something like that off in real time. At full speed, in a professional game. And it came out exactly right. This touchdown pass sat in the middle of what the CBS Sports Breakdown later called one of Clark's best passing performances of the season. And when you look at the full list of assists from that game, the variety is what stands out. She had a wicked bounce pass to Kelsey Mitchell early in the game, catching Arike Ogunbowale flat-footed as Mitchell slipped behind her defender for a layup. She had a high pick-and-roll read where she drew the Dallas center up and whipped an overhead pass to Natasha Howard for an uncontested layup before the wings could rotate. She had drive and kicks, post entries, skip passes, everything in the playmaking arsenal. But the touchdown throw was the one that cut through all of it and became the moment everyone was replaying and sharing and talking about the next day. Now here is the thing about Caitlin Clark that gets overlooked in a lot of the mainstream conversation around her game. Most of the attention she gets, and there is a lot of it, tends to focus on the shooting, the logo threes, the deep range, the pull-up jumpers from distances that most players would not even consider reasonable shot attempts. And that part of her game is real and it is spectacular and it absolutely deserves every highlight reel it gets. But the people who watch her closely, the coaches and analysts and players who break down film and study how she actually operates, will tell you something different. They will tell you that the passing is the thing. The passing is what truly separates her. And the July 13th game against Dallas was the clearest possible evidence of that argument. Because Clark herself said it after the game. I thought my playmaking was really good, she said. There was no reason for me to shoot that much. 14 points, 13 assists. And she felt like she could have been even more of a facilitator if the game had asked for it. That is a different level of basketball IQ. Think about what it actually means to finish a game with 13 assists in 25 minutes of court time. It means you are making a correct, high-difficulty decision with the basketball roughly every 2 minutes you are on the floor. It means the defense never had a read on you long enough to take anything away. Because the moment they committed to stopping one thing, you were already delivering the ball somewhere else. It means your teammates were not just running their sets. They were genuinely open, genuinely in rhythm, genuinely being put in positions to succeed by the person running the offense. 13 assists is not a stat that happens by accident. It is the product of elite preparation, elite vision, and elite trust between a point guard and the players around her. And the Fever showed all of that in the first half alone, putting up those 64 points on a Dallas team that had no answer for what Indiana was doing offensively. The matchup itself added another layer to the storyline, because this was not just Indiana versus Dallas on a random July Sunday. This was the first professional head-to-head between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers, the two most celebrated players in recent women's basketball history, the back-to-back #1 overall draft picks, the players who had been compared and contrasted in every basketball conversation for the past 2 years. Bueckers came into the game having already established herself as a legitimate star for the Wings, and she delivered on her end of the bargain with 21 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists in 33 minutes. That is an efficient, high-quality performance by any measure. But the gap between the two teams on that day was enormous. And a large part of that gap came down to what Clark was doing as a facilitator versus what anyone on Dallas was doing at that level. Bueckers scored, Clark orchestrated, and on this particular Sunday, the orchestration won by 19 points. The injury context around this game matters too, because it reframes just how impressive the performance actually was. Clark had missed significant time during the 2025 season with a groin injury that had kept her off the floor for weeks. She came back cautiously, working her way back into game shape, getting her legs back under her, rebuilding the explosiveness and burst that define her game at its highest level. Indiana head coach Stephanie White had been monitoring her closely throughout the comeback. And after the Wings game, White made it clear that the Clark she saw on July 13th was the Clark she had been waiting to get back. "I think you can see it. Not just in taking off with the ball in her hands," White said. "But you can see it in the lift in her shot. She looks strong. She looks loaded in her actions. You can tell by the way she gets to the free throw line, too. So I just think her movement patterns and her burst are back." That quote means something, because Stephanie White does not give out that kind of praise casually. She is a coach who holds her players to an extremely high standard. And when she says the burst is back, she is telling you that what you are watching is the real thing, not a shadow of it. The 5 steals Clark collected in that game deserve their own mention, because they speak to something about how she was locked in defensively as well as off-aggressively. 5 steals in 25 minutes is a relentless, high-activity performance on that end of the floor. It means she was reading passing lanes, anticipating ball movement, getting into driving lines before the offensive player could establish themselves. The touchdown pass itself came directly from one of those steals. That block on Quinterly that triggered the fast break. Defense leading to offense. The whole thing connected in one seamless sequence. That is not luck. That is a player playing complete basketball at an extremely high level, contributing on both ends, creating advantages through effort and instinct every single time she touches the ball. What the Fever did after the second quarter break also tells you something important about how this team functions when Clark is operating at this level. Indiana outscored Dallas by 39 in the second quarter alone, turning what had been a tight 1-point game after the first period into a blowout by halftime. That kind of second quarter explosion does not happen without a point guard who can control the tempo of the game, speeding it up when the defense is scrambling, slowing it down when the advantage has already been gained, reading which teammates are hot and feeding them early and often. Clark did all of that in those 10 minutes. She found Cunningham. She found Mitchell. She found Howard in the pick and roll. She found the open player on every possession. And her teammates converted at an enormous rate. 30 assists on 40 made baskets for the game. A number that reflects elite ball movement from the entire roster, not just from one player. There is a reason this game and this pass became the moment that everybody in the basketball world was talking about the next morning. It was not just the beauty of the throw, though the throw was absolutely beautiful. It was the context around it. A generational player returning from injury, playing against the other generational player in her era. In the first professional matchup fans had been waiting years to see. And delivering not a scoring performance but a passing masterpiece that left the entire arena in disbelief. The touchdown pass to Sophie Cunningham was the single most viral moment from that game. But it represented something bigger than one play. It was a statement. It was Caitlin Clark telling everyone watching, the doubters, the analysts, the people who had been wondering whether the injury had taken something away, that she was back, that the vision was back, that the playmaking was back, and that the version of her game that had been redefining expectations for women's basketball was still very much alive and operating at full power. And when you watch that clip back, Clark fielding the ball in stride, reading Cunningham running the lane, throwing that laser over the defender's outstretched arms, the ball dropping perfectly into Cunningham's hands without breaking her stride, Cunningham going up for the easy finish while Clark is already reacting, already celebrating, already feeling the electricity of a play executed exactly right. You understand why the announcer called it a touchdown. Because in every way that matters, that is exactly what it was. A perfectly thrown pass, a perfectly run route, two teammates on the same page in real time, and a basketball play so clean, so precise, so effortlessly executed at full speed that it reminded every single person watching why Caitlin Clark is not just the most exciting player in the WNBA right now. She is one of the most exciting players in the history of the sport. Full stop.